I've been told by everybody up on this roof that they're all off the roof. I am on the roof of exposure 4. Got fire through the roof of the 5 million, the entire rear section.
Now remember, given the payday, has he been accounted for? Okay.
610B, that was the payday, 610B.
I'm here. We got a fire. 1.5-story, single-family dwelling. Fire shown from the second floor. Give me a second alarm on this.
Up to the top floor. I got people hanging out the top floor windows with a baby.
Commercial building. A lot of fire, a lot of smoke. Go ahead and strike a third alarm on my orders on this.
Got people on the front fire escape here with windows rented below them. We need somebody up there.
Yeah, let them know we got a job. I'm pulling up now. Second alarm, I got a 1-story single-family frame. Heavy fire showing from the attic.
So we're using all hands. We got one line stretch, fire to 4th floor. Second line being stretched. Primary searches are underway.
Hey, welcome back to our Fire Engineering Podcast, The Command Post. I'm Chief Rick Lasky, along with my good buddy, Chief John Salka. And we've got another great topic for you lined up today. Before we get started, John, we're in Minnesota. We're in Duluth, Minnesota, for the Minnesota State Fire Chiefs Association. I'll just say, what'd you think of the crowd this morning?
Great crowd. Obviously, it's great to be on right after opening ceremonies, and the opening ceremonies was great. Of course, they didn't have one last year because of COVID, like many other people. So this is the first one in 2 years, which just by virtue of the fact that you didn't have one last year produces probably a bigger crowd. So they had a very good crowd, over 450 or 475 people today, and so they were happy with that. Very informative and very, very nice opening ceremony. And then we followed. They didn't even get up from their seats. There was no break or anything. They introduced us and we got up, and I thought the crowd was great. Not only the numbers, but the participation. It was a good crowd that jumped into it, and I think they enjoyed the program.
Well, in the room, like I said, the room was packed. Big auditorium here at the convention center, right on the lake, on
the big one, on Superior.
We're staring at it right now. It's beautiful. But like you said, great opening, great group, and I just think people are dying to get out, John. We said it before that a lot of corporate people, God bless them, they'd rather stay at home. A lot of them, I think, just those that you and I've talked to, not firefighters. Firefighters want to get out. They want to get back to classes. They want to get back to the conferences, and it was great. It was great. We did. It's still the best job in the world, leading through tough times, which was actually perfect timing for everything that's been going on. So,
and it was a good topic for a Chiefs Association. Obviously Chiefs are in the driver's seat in a lot of fire departments, and whatever it is that they're not actually doing, they're having an impact or a directive on getting done their way. I think we made that point a couple of times today, that even the work that company officers do, is led by the Chiefs. The Chiefs set the terms and the conditions of what's going on in the fire department. So I thought it was very apropos.
Well, and we've talked about this plenty of times about, it's and no disrespect, because we've all been there. It's easy. It's a lot easier being the battalion chief or the number 2 chief or whatever. But for the chief, those wearing 5 trumpets, Bruno used to say it best. When you're assistant chief or a deputy, the buck used to stop somewhere around here, but not when you're the boss. When you're the boss, it's right in front of you. It's in your lap, and you got to make a decision. So,
right.
Well, that being said, one of and this kind of jumped out at both of us today while we were doing that program. It's something we get asked a lot of questions now. We get a lot of play, if you will, good play in class on this particular slide. And this quote comes from one of our, we'll call him a mentor and one of our idols, Colin Powell. General Colin Powell, former Secretary of State, Colin Powell, who recently just passed. Very, very sad. A great man, great leader, great father, great husband, just passed. But out of the probably 25 quotes we use from him, one of the ones that I guess maybe we should hit on today, it came up today again in class, is the quote from General Colin Powell about the day soldiers stop bringing you their problems is the day you have stopped leading them. The day soldiers have stopped bringing you their problems is the day you've stopped leading them. And John, I guess where I want to go with that is, I've told the story several times about, having dinner with Bruno and Brennan, Tom Brennan, Chief Tom Brennan, and Alan Bernasini, and hey, how's the job going? And Louis Love said, well, if it wasn't for the people, it'd be a great job. And Bruno says, hey, dumbass. If it weren't for the people who wouldn't have a job. And, you get to that point where, I guess, misguided emotions, where when your guys come to you with a lot of challenges, a lot of situations, a lot of problems, you end up taking that as a hardship instead of a blessing. And you've heard me tell the story several times where I had a more senior battalion chief. Every freaking workday, John, he'd come in, he'd knock on the door. Hey, boss, you got a second? I'm like, yeah. And it got to be, boss, you got a moment? I'm like, oh, Jesus, what's wrong now? Like, what's up? Well, and part of that was he was never really given the opportunity to lead. His hands were always held before, by a previous administrator. But I got to a point where I just said to him, I said, all right, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Because I really can't tell. I really can't tell you more bad stuff this week. First of all, can we go through a week without smashing into stuff around here? And I said, is this good or bad? Because I just haven't. And I did it a couple times. And what do you think happened?
Yeah, I bet he stopped coming around.
He stopped coming. He stopped coming around. And it took me a good 2-3 years. I mean, we talked and we worked together just fine. Nothing like that stuff. But a good 2 to 3 years to get him comfortable, I guess it will be, coming back with questions and problems.
Good lesson there. Good, obviously for you, but for our listeners as well, a good lesson. Sometimes you got to be careful how you react to somebody, what you say and how you say it. In your case, I mean, and I'm not prejudging it, but in your case, could have been a tough, long day for you. You're going to handle a bunch of crap in the morning, and suddenly he appears again, and maybe you had him a day before or 2 days before, and not that you let that slip out. You were saying what you really felt at the moment, but when you say something like that turns somebody off or turns somebody away from you, and it wasn't meant to do that. But you can see how easy a couple of words can just come out over the course of a meeting in a hallway or somebody coming into your office for a minute. So when you're in that role, when you're in the role when you're a company commander, when you're a captain, when you're a chief of a department somewhere, sometimes you really gotta you gotta plan things out and think about what you're going to say before you say it, and avoid. Look at the delay you have with this guy. A couple of year delay before you get back to maybe really good, solid conversation about at least stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Time lost that could have been used to, improve conditions and make things better.
Well, and it was another mistake. I've made plenty of mistakes in my career. There are things, John, not just as a firefighter, there's things I did as a fire chief I wish I never did, never said. I just, sometimes it's easy to hone in on those and forget the good stuff.
Right.
And you start picking apart these little things, but that's one of them. That was a leadership lesson. So the more we share that, hopefully someone else won't boo-boo, won't step on that landmine, won't have that problem. But here's my question to you. So, and I know they're not exactly the same. It's like I always say 25 and 52 are the same, but they're different.
Right.
You go to a fire, guys get all fired up, right? I'll just say, let's pick on the leaders or the chief officers now. They go to a job, they're incident, they're the incident commander, or they're in a sector or division, whatever, and they're all fired up and woo-hoo, ha-ha, and we're at a fire and everybody's all fired up about that. And oh man, this is so, and afterwards guys will snap a picture or two or whatever if the family ain't around and so on. My question is, and I thought about this not too long ago, why don't we get excited about the other fires, the people fires, and I know what you'll never be like high-fiving, hey, we got a good job, let's go to work kind of stuff. But when you're a boss, when you're a leader, I think a lot of guys, it's like when you say a probie, when you tell a probie, to scrub toilets and clean the pots and pans and sweep the floors and mop the floor, all that stuff, like it's hardship labor, instead of it's a golden opportunity for them to be able to show you how bad they want to be part of that fire department, because we've all done it. Mm-hmm. What I guess, John, my question is, why do you think it's difficult for officers to look at people fires, people problems, and go after them, attack them, and fix them? And you know what? Maybe every now and then, high five your assistant, your deputy, whoever. Go, we did good at helping that person or fixing that problem. As goofy as it sounds, why aren't we taking pictures?
Right.
In front of that.
You know what? We might not be taking pictures or high fiving each other, but I must admit, and I think you'll agree that there have been many times where I've gotten something done that I was trying to get done for a while. I was trying to get some administrative job done. I was trying to get a decision made by, maybe one of my bosses about something with an apparatus, or maybe a tactics change, or maybe you got involved in rewriting, a firefighter procedures manual with a couple of guys, and you finally come up with the final project, or you plan a hands-on training with a couple of units, and it finally arrives. That day arrives, and it goes off like clockwork with a couple of companies, And you have that same, you almost feel like high-fiving each other sometimes, even though they're not fires, even though they're not challenges, even though they're not, let's say, physically demanding. I mean, we must admit, going to a fire, going to a Hearst tool and entrapment, stuff like that, those are physically demanding, technically challenging situations that when you get done, it's almost like you jumping out of the ring. You jump out like you were in boxing, and you achieved like a physical feat. You see these guys in the Olympics running around the track, and however many meters it is that they're running. And when they finish, how exhilarated they are. I think it's the physical aspect of the firefighting that gets us physically excited at the end about being high-fiving and really feeling excited and doing a good job, and everybody's coming out in one piece, and the job is over, and we knock the fire down, even though there may be damage and destruction. Maybe we limit it to some degree. So, however, on the other hand, I do understand your point about, gee, why don't we feel as excited about handling a personnel problem when a guy comes in and after the second visit you tell him, you know what, and he said, you know what, Cap, you're right. I've been paying a little bit too much attention to what I was doing, leaving my side job to get here for the night tours. I guess I should come in that hour early and get ready here and put the time in here where I've been for 20 years, and maybe I have to adjust my priorities a little bit. I think we do feel as good about it. We just don't really express it in the same way,
Well, and I agree with you. And obviously for our listeners, when I'm talking about getting fired up about it, I think I mentioned already, there's really no quite comparison between that and a structure fire or a good extrication job. But again, just like you said, I guess the point is, where there, I've had it, you've had it, we've talked about it. Over all the years we've been friends, and we've called each other. Hey, John, okay, hear me out. Let me give me 5 minutes to get through this. This is what I got going on. What do you think? But this is the action I'm thinking about taking. We talk about bouncing off each other and stuff like that. And you've done it with me. And later on, so how'd that situation work out? And you go, like it was just perfect. It was like, I mean, everything just hit. And the guy talked about this and said, I'm going to work on this, and admitted a few things, and you're like, oh man. I mean, and actually, John, he's doing better. He's actually doing this and doing that. And I've said this before. It is pretty. It can be difficult fighting fires, obviously, but man, take care of people problems. If you can fight a fire, it is physically exhausting. It's exhausting. Try the mental exhaustion of working through a 3 firefighter personnel issue, problem, challenge, whatever,
right,
where HR wants one fire, the other one needs counseling. This has to happen. What happened? This guy actually just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and this and that, and so on and so forth. And I can remember. I said this before, where we had one of our guys got himself jammed up, and I think totally innocent. It was something he did on duty that had to do with his part-time job. And after he did it, he realized, and I got the call from City Hall and all this stuff. So you remember Tim and Daryl. We both love him. God bless Tim.
Yep.
and Daryl Brown. Daryl's the chief in Grapevine right now. Great man. So we're all sitting there. It took us all morning to plan out. We had a whole dry erase board of, okay, if we say this, his response is going to be this way. And if we go this way, his response is going to be this way. And we did this whole action board on what we had to do. And I said, okay, now, Tim, you stand there. Daryl, you sit in that chair. We'll have him sit in this chair. We had the whole thing
staged out. Yep.
The whole thing staged out. He walked in. I said, Cap, come in, sit down. I'm like, well, all right, ready to do battle, ready to go. And I just said, what were you thinking? And he goes, his exact words, he goes, boss, I don't know what the hell I was thinking. You know what? Do what you got to do. Give me a day, give me 2 days, whatever. I messed up. Just please don't fire me, but I messed up. I just thought I saw this cow. I won't get into what it is.
Right.
And I went,
pleaded guilty, right? Right. As soon as he walked in the door.
He goes, he pulled away, and I went, oh no, what'd I do? Chief, it's my bad. Hang this one on me. And there was a pause in the room, and I looked at Daryl. Daryl's just there. I looked at Tim. Tim's behind Daryl. And for our listeners, Tim Tillman, one of my assistant chiefs, behind the other assistant chief, Daryl, he puts his arms out because this guy can't see him. Like, now what do we do? And I went, well, I told this Cap, I said, well, Cap, okay, we're done. And he goes, that's a signing thing? No paperwork. No suspension. No written, no written. No, or reprimand, no. Not even, no counseling. You know what? This went just like every boss would hope it would go. If someone came in, you know what, owned up to what they did, took control, took you know what, took responsibility for it, a mistake they made, error in judgment, you know, no laws are broken like that. So, you know, it was easy to go, okay, lesson learned.
Problem solved.
What is any more punitive type of punishment, you know, gonna help? It was done. And I was like, God, why don't more guys do that? Just walk in and go, my bad. This was me. Instead of, we spend all this time with excuses and arguments, and you know, we get, I said it before, you want to see the true measure of a person, don't promote them or have to punish them, you know, because if you don't promote them, they get mad at you like you're the one that didn't study hard enough or whatever. And then when you have to discipline them, you know, the punishment, I should say, see how they react to that. John, I was out of town sometimes teaching with you when one of my guys screwed up, and I thought it was pretty legit discipline that was handed out. It wasn't too severe. It wasn't too light. It probably wasn't as much as HR wanted, but I thought it was appropriate. And they were mad at me like I'm the one that did it. I wasn't even in town. I didn't do it. You know. So
well, you know, listen, that's one of the risks you take when you climb the ladder, when you get up to the chief job, when you get up to administration, and you have to manage a workforce. You know, you have people that misbehave in small ways and large ways. You have some people that are going to fight it. Some people, you know, do you want to die on that hill? Some people like that, you know what? They'll come in like your guy did and play his, you know, put his heart on the table and say it was my fault. Other guys will fight you until the third meeting, you know, and say, no, but that's not what I said. That's not what I meant. And what was the negative thing? And how come you didn't do that to Billy last year? So it's the price you pay for being in administration. You have to manage these incidents. You have to dole out either discipline or whatever else it is that goes with the particular situation and move on.
Well, let me ask you. All right, you're the chief of South Blooming Grove. All right, great fire department in Orange County, New York. One of my favorites because they donated a ladder truck to us. Thank you so much to our volunteer fire department, Wichita West in Texas. Chief Fetzer. Ryan Fetzer was excited about that. We were excited to go pick it up and drive it back. We'll talk about that on the show. Oh, well over 3 decades, the New York City Fire Department, you know, better than half your career as a chief battalion commander, lots of company officers, lots of lieutenants, lots of senior firemen, lots of bosses, including battalion chiefs. What did you do as a chief officer? And let's maybe separate in the Bronx versus in the volunteer department. What advice would you give to someone out there, or what did you do to get that relationship with your guys where we both love Mike Scotto, right? Mike Scotto, still Lieutenant 58 truck, right?
Yep.
I love Mike Scotto. Mike, if you're listening, we love you, buddy. To have Mike have that feeling where, you know what, I got to go talk to Chief Salk. I got to, you know, to be able to know he could go in there and bring you a problem, a challenge, or whatever. How do you get to that point? If there's a brand new officer going, Chief, what do I do to establish a relationship with guys?
You know, that's a difficult question to answer because I can't really outline or identify, you know, the steps I've taken or the process that I went through to establish a relationship I had with the company officers in the 18th Battalion. Number one, that was always a revolving door. Some places more of a degree than others. Like 58 truck, the captain, Joe Principio, was there the day I got there. He was there the day I left. He's there today. So there's I never had to deal with another captain of 58 truck, but 38 truck had about 4 captains while I was there, the 16 or 17 years that I was in the 18th Battalion. So I had to reestablish relationships with each new captain, with each new lieutenant as they came and became assigned to one of the companies in my battalion. And then, of course, you know, it's day 2, 3, 4, 5 years, 6 years even, which is a pretty long time for a guy, let's say, stopping through as a lieutenant somewhere if he's going to continue studying to make captain. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, off he would go. And so what happens is, you know, so I was the battalion commander, but not so much that, but, you know, there's 4 chiefs in a battalion, and each of those 4 chiefs have, you know, a set of corresponding company officers that work with them in their group. So when they come to work, they pretty much work with those company officers. And each of those groups of people, meaning the battalion chief and the company officers that work for them, they get to know each other, and they get like they've been saying for 100 years. When you were in Proby school, when you were in the Boy Scouts, when you were on a Little League team, every umpire has certain things he likes. So every fire chief has certain things he likes. So every math teacher has everything. You know, there's certain things everybody likes, right? Some chiefs are big on uniforms. Some chiefs are big on response times. So everybody gets to know each other. You get to know what the priorities are for each other. And what are you trying to do? You try and satisfy each other. You try and keep each other happy. I tried to keep my lieutenants happy and my captains happy by by dealing with them, being fair with them, being open and honest with them about what I expected. There were times when they weren't really happy about what I wanted, but I made it clear what I did want. And you know what? And if it was a good reciprocal relationship, then they, I'm sure to some degree would try and provide that. If they knew I wanted to turn out faster and everybody had their gear on when they get off the rig, then generally that's what I saw. It wasn't a ridiculous request. And the same thing went the other way around. So, like I said, what did I do to establish that what I consider, I don't know if they would consider it, but I thought I could consider my relationship with almost all of my officers as a great relationship. You know?
But I was there a couple times. Once I left your office, you know, because when the guys came in, where there was no issue with them going, Chief, you got a second? One of your captains, or if the lieutenant's on, the captain's not on,
right.
Come in to talk to you. Or when you're making your rounds, and you're at 88 engine 38's house, you know, 38 truck, and the captain or lieutenant that's maybe on that, you know, whoever's in charge at that firehouse is like, you know what I'm saying? We always said when you walk in, there's a cup of coffee in the counter. They want to just talk to you,
Exactly,
or they want to talk to you,
right?
You know, and I watched that, and I've always sat back and went, I watched it with Eddie Enright, you know, the same thing in Chicago with the 3rd Battalion, you know.
And let me interrupt you for a minute, just because I have a thought that I don't want to lose. And you know what's great about that? It's a fire service thing that I think we have and nobody else has. Nobody else has. Maybe the military, a peacetime military, or maybe even at war. But we have this social structure set up in the fire service. So Chief Salka shows up to 45 engine, 58 truck, or 38 truck and 88 engine for a drill visit, just for a social visit, just for a stop by, a supervisory visit, right? And what happens? It very quickly, even though it's official, not unless I walk in and say, roll call. Okay, Chief, bing, 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 Battalion 18 for a roll call, and everybody walks in. So then it'll be an official visit. Okay, attention, roll call, engine, truck, all present, counted for, hand salute, ready, dismiss, any questions, yes, no, and out the door you go.
Right.
But on the other hand, a lot of times I walked in, hey, Chief, you want to see the man? Nah, I'm just going to go in the back and talk to Lieutenant Claus. He back there? Yeah, he's in the kitchen, Chief. Okay, go back and have a cup of coffee and start talking. And suddenly there's this sort of at ease social atmosphere in the kitchen that you can talk about stuff that, like, the PD doesn't have that. When the sergeant goes out to the street and sees his patrolman, when a patrolman come into the captain's office in a precinct to talk about something, when the sanitation guy supervisor goes out to make sure his guys are plowing or picking up trash or doing what, it's more of an official encounter every time they see each other. In the fire department, we have these firehouses, we have these kitchens with coffee machines and a TV on in the background, and it sort of sets the stage for a much more, I don't know, an at ease, a more comfortable atmosphere. So a captain and a chief can talk about maybe an issue that they have, maybe even up in the office. Hey, Chief, come on upstairs for a minute. And we go upstairs in the office. We're still in a sort of an at ease type of a situation. We're in an office that has a desk and a TV on, maybe the bunk over there and a recliner, maybe some music playing that he turns off and says, let's sit down and talk about this. It's still a much more at ease atmosphere that I think allows us to handle problems a little bit more easily than the structured type of supervisory situation that other agencies might have trying to deal with the same exact situation.
And I've heard you say this, and I say this too. So, all right, let me different spin on that question. When we put up the slide, good officers, that good company officer, good chief officer was approachable. And we always say, but part two to approachable was they were open-minded.
Right. So
for a boss out there, for a lieutenant or captain or a chief, as much as it's, hey, they know that here comes Chief Salka, we're going to talk, hey, pour a cup of coffee. Part of that is knowing that you're actually listening. It's one thing to be approachable, like you said. Pretty much most people are approachable, but open-minded. I think sometimes for a lot of bosses who are stuck in their ways or don't, I said it today in class, there's times where people brought stuff up to me and I'm like, what? Oh, I didn't think about that.
I heard you say that.
Yeah, you know what? You're right.
That's a new thought. Yeah.
And I changed what I was thinking. I was like, because it's easy. And I'll tell you, I could be as stubborn as the next guy. I go, no, I always want, this is what I want. And the guy goes, but Chief, really? I mean, just because, can't we try? I'm like, a lot of the guys, is it a lot of guys? You know what actually is? Tell me why. Okay. And you go
and that's the important part. That's the part that the fact that you're open to suggestion and you keeping your mind open to new ideas and maybe saying, you know what, I'm not sure about that, but I never thought about that either. Let me hash that over a little bit. Let me get home tonight and think about that and sleep on that, and I'll give you a buzz tomorrow, something like that. However, let me say that I've had situations both in the Bronx firehouse and, believe it or not, back at South Plymouth Grove in the volunteer firehouse. There sometimes more than in the city, because in the city of New York Fire Department, just like in the Louisville Fire Department, Chicago Fire Department, all these other places that we've been and visited to and worked at, in career fire departments, there's a little bit more of a structure. There's a little bit more respect
Right.
for authority and command, and he's the officer and you're the subordinate. That's the fireman and he's the lieutenant. And in the volunteer fire department, not so much.
You need some finesse.
Not so much. That's right, because it's still Bill and John, and there are a couple of guys that to this day, right now, that are young officers who are the age of my children, that call me John in the firehouse. I'm the fire chief right now, and now most guys call me chief in the firehouse, in the volunteer firehouse, and a couple of guys call me John. I'm not bothered by it, but I haven't figured out what the justification for that is. I haven't figured out what that is. That's sort of like. I think that's somebody pushing the envelope a little bit for familiarity, for maybe special treatment or something like that. But my whole point is getting back to the volunteer fire department, where there's a little bit less of a structure, at least the command structure. Command structure exists, but it's not quite as observed as it is in, let's say, career departments. Sometimes there, I end up in situations where I am not really angry, but I am upset. I am upset about something that's going on, or something that somebody wanted to do, or something that somebody said without consulting anywhere else, or without mentioning somebody, or without asking me or one of the assistant chiefs.
Right.
And sometimes I'm angry about it. And then I talk to my wife about it a little bit. Sometimes I've called you about it. And the next day I'm not angry about it anymore. I realize that, you know what, he was probably doing the right thing. Boy, am I glad I didn't call him up yesterday and say, what are you doing? What are you doing? What did I just see on Facebook? Or what did I just see on our GroupMe, email server that we have? Instead, sometimes I remember that, just like you said, do you want to die on that hill? I quote what you say all the time. If you're angry at somebody, or dealing with somebody, or disciplining somebody, and something you're about to do is going to make you feel good, to not do it and to wait till tomorrow. And I've done that a number of times, and every single time it has benefited me. It has helped me make a better decision, not doing it when I was either tied up or angry or emotionally involved. So, like I said, I'm a bit of not of a disciplinarian, but I sort of like things structured, and I like things the way they're supposed to be. And when things vary a little bit, sometimes I get uneasy about that, and I have to wait a little while before I deal with it.
All right. So part three of this is, I believe there is, but you and I, we agree on that stuff. Sometimes we don't agree. We're always good about that. There's a difference between, we're talking about being approachable. We're talking about, this whole soldiers bringing their leaders their problems, right? I think there's a difference between being argumentative and debating. I think debating, it can get emotional, but debating, I think, is a more, I think it's a more of a fighting for, arguing for, or whatever.
It's more productive than arguing.
Argumentative.
Yes.
And I think there's bosses that don't know how to separate that.
Yes.
That,
there's guys that turn every discussion or every debate into an argument.
Yeah.
Yes. And it shouldn't be. You should be able to discuss it. We talked about it today with Cola Powell and a couple of the other leaders that we cite and talk about in our leadership classes. We talk about that, when we're forming policy, when we're trying to make decisions, I welcome disagreement. I welcome discussion and debate. However, once we decide, that's where I come in. Once we decide, I want you to fall in line and support that decision, that new policy, like you made it up yourself. But again, going back to the debate and the formulation process, everybody should have an open mind there and not take it personal. Somebody comes up with an idea that you think is absolutely ridiculous. You shouldn't say that. You should say, well, you know what, Tommy, I disagree. What I think is we should let them do it first and then talk about it later, instead of calling somebody's idea ridiculous or turning a discussion on policy
rolling
into
your eyes, making faces.
Right. Saying, no, you do that all the time. You always say, once you start talking it to you and me and I, then you end up with people's personal feelings getting involved.
So there's a difference between being argumentative and
debating.
Debating.
Yes.
And it just, look, I told you, there's things as a fire chief, I sit there sometimes and I got to get past this. Jamie says it all the time, my wife, she's like, you tend to think more about the things that didn't go right. You think about all the good things. You did all these good things, even though that's what the guys do. The guys tend to remember the one or two things that maybe you didn't make the right decision versus all the good stuff. I find myself doing that. And there's things I went, oh, I wish I never said that.
And you can't undo it. And you can't
unring that bell, right?
No, you can't.
You can't unring that bell.
Now, obviously, you can change you can change your act, you can change your opinion on something, and you can even not announce it, but you can even let that be well known. Next time you're sitting at the dinner table at the firehouse talking about something, you can say, "Oh yeah, well, you know what, guys, I did say that last month, but I've been thinking about it, and here's what I think we're going to do." I had a little change of heart on that, and you can ease that right into the conversation and say, "Yeah, you know what? I've made mistakes. I've made decisions that I had to modify. I've made decisions that I've had to reverse."
And that helps your credibility.
Absolutely.
That helps your credibility because they're going, sometimes.
Did you hear the captain? Did you hear what he said? Yeah, he admitted today that that was the wrong thing.
I thought about it. I didn't like it.
Yep.
Let's change it or whatever. So it is, I think when you make decisions, we've said this, when you're emotional, they're always wrong.
You know
they're
what?
Always wrong. When you're
I can't even remember one case where it was right when I did something.
On the fire ground, when you make decisions based on emotions, we get people hurt and killed. In the firehouse, which is where we spend most of our time, all right, it's like I always ask, have you ever said something and you wish you grabbed the words in the sky
moment you said it, right,
and shove them back and you go, that's too late.
Yep.
And then, so sometimes it's choosing the avenue. It's like you said, is that the hill you want to die on? Maybe you need to let it go, come back to it, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But, I guess the whole point of this, the day soldiers stop bringing the problems is the day you stop leading them. I learned from one particular instance where one guy didn't want, and I'm sure that maybe there was others, but I did change it. I did, and change.
And one more point about that. And it doesn't have to be a mistake necessarily that you make as a leader or as a boss or as an officer or as a chief. It doesn't necessarily have to be a mistake where you have to say, really, is that what are you bringing to me today? Where you might turn a guy away. It may just be happening by your tone, by your lack of enthusiasm about receiving somebody to come into the office and talk about stuff. And instead of it being an event or a comment that ends it, it just might be the way you act. And you might just suddenly realize after a week goes by or 2 weeks go by or 3 weeks go by, hey, you know what? Nobody's knocking on the door. I haven't had a guy stop in here in about 3 weeks. Usually I have 1 or 2 guys a week come in and say, hey, Cap, hey, Chief, what about this? What about that? Do you want? And now I seem to be sitting here by myself the last month or so. I wonder what's going on. You may be the one that discovers it by your lack of, dealing with them, but a lack of guys coming by and stopping by the office and commenting, especially if that's something that used to happen on a regular basis and suddenly it slows down or stops, you might have to sit back and say, gee, maybe I'm sort of closing myself out. Maybe I'm unapproachable now. I better, maybe look around and see what's going on.
Maybe they're going to the other boss or bosses instead of you because, it's like, well, it never really goes to him or he gets all emotional or whatever.
Or he shakes his head yes and he never does nothing.
Exactly. No follow-up. Let's go talk to Chief so-and-so.
So you got to keep your eyes and ears open. You got to a little situational awareness, right? You got to keep situational awareness and say, you know what, things are changing a little bit right around me here. I don't think I'm doing anything different, but maybe you are.
Well, like I said, I wish I could go back in time to fix some things, but what we can do, because we can't do that, can't unring that bell, is help folks make good decisions in the future. Listen and pay attention to your people. Exercise some patience, go for a walk, call a friend, take a deep breath, walk out to your car, sleep on it.
That's right.
But I'm not saying we need to be high-fiving, jumping up and down, go, man, that was a great stop like we did in that fire. But start looking for those special moments when you're dealing with a personnel problem or a problem of any nature,
right.
Instead of it always being, oh God, I got to go through this again. No one, like you always say, nobody drives to work, and you use it several different ways. Well, always nobody drives to work, but God, I hope I have a personnel problem today.
Right. Oh God, I can't wait to go out on building inspection today.
Yeah.
Right.
But we know what building inspections does for the safety of firefighters and the people who live there or work there. We also know that having the right attitude about addressing people problems, the people fires. The fires away from the fires.
The fires in the firehouse.
Yeah, exactly. We did that for a reason. Our subtitle on our book, Fire Alarm Leadership, from the firehouse to fireground, because fighting fires is a task. It's a bullet point to the job description. The majority of what we do is back in the firehouse. So what do you have to do to embrace that, to show your people, it doesn't mean you have to give away the store. It doesn't mean you have to collapse and everything. You have to change. Because sometimes you have to stick to your guns. But again, stay open-minded, stay approachable.
Another great perspective on leadership.
No, that was great. Hey, I'm glad that kind of popped into it when we got done teaching. We talked about it. And, like I said, we never really have an agenda. It's kind of like, hey, we need to talk about this on the next show. and we roll with it. So
Excellent.
hopefully to our listeners, we'll help one or two of you dodge a bullet, not
Jump on a
step
grenade.
landmine. all those different sayings that'll help you do your job a little bit better and help you be more successful. If you can always learn from someone else's experiences, whether those are good or bad or in between, hopefully you'll do better. So John, email if they want to get a hold of you.
Chief John Salka at gmail.com.
And I'm Chief Lasky at gmail.com. And we ask you, first of all, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Command Post. You can always catch some great shows here at fireengineering.com, as well as the Hump Day Hangouts on Wednesdays. You and I and Chief Bobby Halton and Chief Scott Thompson and our good friend Chief Terry McGrath have the third Wednesday of every month for the issues and challenges. So you can catch that. Those are always placed on YouTube and all the other shows that we've been doing the Command Post for years and years and years and years and years. So there's a lot of shows there. But we want to thank you for tuning in and for listening. Spread the word. We always ask you at the end of our shows to please keep the men and women in our armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. And remember, never forgetting means just that, never forgetting. Thank you. God bless you. And we'll see you next time.